If you have a spouse who doesn't believe in equity, you are facing trouble getting her on that page, a financial plan really helps.
Why her? Excuse me.
I also wanted to push my brain to think that, hey, the salary is not the only income. Can you get more?
We took some advice on where to invest. You wanted to take that advice, but it was very important for me to hear it from a third person. So yeah, we got third.
घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर.
Anyways.
While I talk about all kinds of frivolous shit on this channel, starting from luxury watches to luxury cars, I want to call out I am a very thoughtful spender. I will not buy a luxury car for two reasons. One, the roads don't deserve it, and two, the taxes are ridiculous. USD INR split is another important one to talk about. Given our biggest goal, one of the biggest goals is kids' education abroad. We are saving or planning for USD, and if he ends up studying in India, we have more, then I'll buy a luxury car. We are a lot more invested in the US markets than the Indian markets because the Indian rupee has depreciated like crazy. So every time an Opex spend comes, I'm just going to multiply this into 12 if it's monthly and then into 40 and then add that to my retirement corpus because I want to be able to sustain this for the rest of my life.
I don't get a lot of joy from spiky spends. I don't understand expensive things either, so maybe that's part of it.
I'm very glad for that. This channel is brought to you by the 01 Media Network by Zerodha. With their support, I'll be helping you spend your money wisely. Episode 2 of Kapoor Finances. Today, I'm joined by my wife, Shreya. We are going to be discussing our own journey with money as we have been married for about 7 years. And so we're going to be talking through a few things today. Why should you watch this? I think, look, the idea with this series is to get couples to talk about their journey with money and hopefully leave everybody with best practices, things that worked out for them, some mistakes that they made along the way that they've sort of recognized and they can share that with you. And so the idea really is to walk you through our mistakes. Shreya has kindly agreed to come on the channel for the third time this year. Given it's a little quiet at work. So thank you for joining us. Okay, why should you watch this video? I think we'll break this down into two phases. One, we'll break it down into before marriage. How are we individually with money before marriage? And then after marriage, how did things change? As our marriage evolved, as time passes by, our relationship with money sort of changed. And so we'll walk you through that. We'll talk about our savings, investments, current portfolio splits, what are the goals you're working towards and all the other fun stuff. So yeah, stay tuned. And if you want to be featured on this series, by the way, because I plan to get more couples, I'll leave a Google form in the description below. Just fill that up and I will be in touch. So yeah, with that, let's jump in. Shreya, how should we start? We will start. I will tell you. I have this,
Yes, please.
I have these cue cards, which I've put together before this video so that I don't miss out on anything. But let's start with section 1, which is before marriage.
Section 1.
So section 1, before marriage. Let me ask you first and then I'll answer our money values. Essentially, before you got married, how were you thinking about money, savings, investments, all of that stuff?
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to talk about before marriage, but post MBA because pre-MBA, of course, didn't even meet the tax bracket kind of income. So I don't think that really counts for much. But I mean, I think I've always been disciplined about literally everything in my life. And so financial discipline was also just one of the various types of disciplines that come naturally to me. It comes potentially from having seen my parents, and specifically my mom's always spoken about it as well, about how, savings is such a big part of what you should do. So you start earning and you start saving pretty much from the same day. So even when I was earning this non-taxable, tax qualifying income, I was still saving back then. So yeah, I think I've always been saving a part of my salary. When I started earning post the MBA, I think I was saving anywhere between 25 to 30%, which isn't a lot, but I was living in Bombay and it's not the cheapest place. And then I was also traveling to and fro between Bangalore and you're in your 20s and you don't really think a lot about saving. But yeah, even then it was about 30%. A large part of this, however, was entirely in fixed deposits because that was the only saving instrument that I knew of. And so I think it was fixed deposits. It was also the post office savings scheme, which is something that my mom had been doing for us for a very long time. Having said that, I think what I did realize two things that I took from my parents. One was, of course, that savings is an essential part of it starts from the day that you start earning. The second is that I noticed compounding also very early on. Ironically, from the post office savings scheme that I speak of, because every monthly interest would then get reinvested into a recurring deposit. And so manually. Yeah, manually. Of course, it wasn't the most inefficient way of compounding, albeit, but still compounding nonetheless. So yeah, I think these were the two things that I was doing, compounding and saving. And I think my money value, if I were to put it into a simple term, would probably be discipline would be one. The other is I think I've always believed that wealth is your savings, essentially, is what's going to result in wealth later on. And I think that's how I've been brought up. So I always thought that savings was the only way that I would get wealthy. And so that's the discipline piece. The second is that I think if I have a baseline of income and expenses, I don't oscillate much beyond that baseline. So even if my income were to rise, I don't necessarily feel the need to start spending more because I don't get a lot of joy from like spiky spends. I don't get a lot of joy from owning expensive things. I don't understand expensive things either. So maybe that's part of it.
I'm very glad for you that
So-
you don't get joy from spiky spends and
I don't
splurgy.
I don't get joy from spiky spends. I don't get joy from, and maybe like experiences, but also experiences that feel sustainable. So like finding a really nice getaway close to home where I can go like 4 times a year just gives me more happiness than like this one dream destination, which isn't like we still do it, but I mean, that's me. Like whatever feels sustainable and like whatever is closer to my baseline is how I operate.
I think travel is overrated. So
I don't think it's overrated. I just like workations more than holidays.
you just like work more than vacation. So let's just put it out there. But okay, I have one thought when you said that in your 20s you were not thinking as much while you were investing, like when you were spending. I also feel like in your 20s you're a lot more bullish about life. about अरे अब तो हम CEO बनेंगे, अब तो हमने बहुत आगे जाना है. And so I think that realization starts to dawn upon you that it's maybe not, like maybe you're not becoming a CEO.
So like savings into the number of working years and suddenly John like the number of working years is finite, true. But I do want to add that like, I know you joke about it, but if I could, I don't mind working for like an obscenely long number of years. So
I'm glad you get it for that.
It takes some of the pressure off. Like I don't have this retirement goal. I'm okay.
Okay. I think I echo on that, right? Even I don't plan to stop working. I think in that fire scheme of things that financial independence, retire early, break it up into two. Financial independence is great to achieve because that means you don't do work for money. And I think the best work happens when you don't work for money. So I do want to get into that space. But do I want to retire? No. Like I really want to be working hard for as long as I can. And work is a privilege that a lot of people don't talk about. And so honestly, like I want to keep working for as long as I can. And like we've had role models around us all our lives, right? Your dad is post-retirement, still continues to work. My grandfather was working till he was well in his 90s, right? And like actively working. So I think retire early is definitely overrated. So I would not recommend it. But anyway.
I mean, I'm sure it suits some people, but not for us.
Okay, coming back. I will talk about my pre-marriage financial mindset. I think I was, so again, post-MBA, I was in a student debt. I think that was one difference between the two of us. So I had a student loan, which was taking a large part of my savings in that EMI, which were going. And I was also in a rush to sort of pay off that EMI, which now in retrospect wasn't the wisest decision because the education loan is usually a cheap loan to get. And so if I would have let it run, I would be paying even now. Like it's been 10 years almost since I passed out and I would still be paying that, which is not a bad thing because then that EMI would be insignificant now as compared to what it was back then, right? But anyway, I think that was a mistake, but I wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. So majority of my salary was actually going into paying off my student debt. I think in about 2.5 years, I was done with the loan. And I think after that, what I did was that I did not let that salary hit my bank, like that EMI portion hit my bank account. I just made a SIP. Then directly started transferring that entire amount. So that I would get used to that money. And then over the years, I increased that. While I was, I also want to call out that the other thing which I was actively thinking of was that, hey, while I'm paying off this EMI, I'm not really accumulating any wealth in all these years. So how can I start, like I need to earn more? So I also wanted to like push my brain to think that, hey, the salary is not the only income. Can you get more? Can you do something else, get more money, right? And so I remember my brother and I, he moved to Bangalore around then. And we thought that, okay, we have these 2 rooms in our house. Can we sublet the other room and like stay in one room for a couple of months and see how this goes? And so what ended up happening was we got a really nice guy who stayed in the second room and basically paid our rent for the entire year. So we were living rent-free in Bangalore for a year. And so then that money started coming in, going into our EMIs. I also remember vaguely buying a Swift and putting that on Zoomcar when Zoomcar was doing this entire model with the same attempt of, hey, can I generate more passive income around like say this car, which is an asset.
Passive income. Like passive income was a concept I didn't know existed.
So I was like, even then, right, I was always thinking that how do I get something more without working? But the Zoomcar thing didn't work out. I think it was a break even at the end of 3 years, and like my brother and I were glad that the car was sold. And okay, this is off our Anyway, I'm digressing. Coming back. So yeah, I think coming back to the point, my money values were also in this wealth accumulation kind of a zone where I really wanted to start accumulating wealth, and as a result of which my spends were also thoughtful. I was trying to save aggressively even though I couldn't because of the EMI, and I was actively trying to get rid of that loan. But yeah, I think that's where I was.
Yeah. So I hear that what's common for both of us is that we were both very disciplined. And while I picked up compounding and savings from my parents, you picked up, well, paying off the loan early.
Yeah.
You were in a hurry to kind of do that. But you were also looking at alternative sources of passive income, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, talk to us a little about what got you that way.
I think I've been a little aggressive in general about my savings and investments because I want money to grow fast. And I think it's stemming from my upbringing where I basically, in a nutshell, I went to boarding school where there were people around me who were a lot richer than I was. To give you a reference, there was this one guy who, on one of these Founders Day that happens, he had a Patek Philippe on his wrist. I did not even know what Patek was till somebody told me that this watch is possibly worth like a couple of 40-50 lakhs back in like 2006. Right? So it's like, that's the kind of people I was surrounded with. And I was on the other extreme, like a Maruti 800. Right? And so I think that got me in this, like I'd say aspiration that at some point maybe I also want to own something like this, and that's why I wanted to get to in a aggressive mindset where I wanted to accumulate wealth and let it grow fast. And that's why I was always like, FDs and all is not going to do it. We need like high growth assets, and equity is that. And so I think that's how I became, like, my money mindset is probably stemming from my early years of being in an environment where everybody was like way richer than I was. Yeah. Can you remind us of how we were splitting our expenses back immediately when we moved in and we got married? How were we thinking about our expenses and our savings back then as a household?
I think, if I remember correctly, we were thinking about it individually, honestly, but we were transparent about it. So what changed? I mean, we were transparent like in the years leading up to marriage as well, because I mean, we knew each other for a little longer. We were dating seriously, but so we were transparent about like, hey, this is where I'm investing or this is where I'm saving, but we were still doing it in an individual capacity almost. And so that continued for a decent period of time. And I also feel like it stemmed from a fact that our risk appetites are very different. Like I continued to be very FD heavy, or at least, did not really warm up to market linked savings instruments very soon. So I continued to do what felt safe to me, and you continued to be aggressive about the entire equity portfolio. So I think, that's what I remember from the years.
And I think we were splitting our expenses also halfway, right? Like if there's a rent, if you're paying rent, then I'm paying maid salaries.
Yeah, like not halfway, but we would do that.
Mentally, we were trying to sort of ensure that it's evenly split so that neither of our savings sort of get impacted.
Correct.
And we were also earning similar amounts. And so I think that also...
I think that's an important caveat. We met at B school. And so, I mean, our entire journey, relationship to marriage has been like similar income. So it's been, it's been very even. Like
So we were trying to split it down the middle. Hers was very debt heavy. Mine was very equity heavy. She had those post office things which were still running back then, which have just expired now. And mine was equity heavy then, equity heavy now. But we were collectively looking at our overall portfolio as a unit as well, and I think that sort of evened it out and balanced it out.
Okay, so I remember where we were, if I would have on my own done like a certain percentage in debt and a certain percentage in equity, and for you those percentages would be very different. You went even more aggressive in equity than you would have normally done, and so that the overall portfolio was still a little equity heavy, if that makes sense.
I do think our overall portfolio was equity heavy early years. I think it was still tilted towards post office because we're still early years, and your post office savings were so heavy that I don't think our portfolio early years were equity heavy. Only over a period of time it finally became, as post office started to expire and as you got comfortable with equity, which brings me to my next section, that how did you get comfortable with equity? And I will tell you.
I don't
so you want to take it?
And I don't know if we talk about the same memory, but I remember this was around the time of a couple of things happened all at once. I think it was just before COVID, or it was around the time of COVID. And we met up with two people. I don't know if it was interlinked or wasn't. The first was we actually did our first financial plan.
Yeah, I think that was the key reason. Yeah.
That was the key reason. We did our first financial plan, which, by the way, was a huge exercise. I know it was fun for you, but for someone like me, it was quite overwhelming because I find it hard to even remember like my passwords and where is what. And so that was one exercise that we undertook.
Which means I did everything.
which
For the
is
most part.
potentially trolling, or documentation is something that just does not, like, I cannot deal with documentation. But so yeah, so that is one huge exercise that we undertook, and as part of that we aligned everything. We took stock of what we had,
Yeah.
and we also for the first time spoke about and aligned on our goals.
Yeah.
Which, if I can recollect, were,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, buying a house was fun.
Yeah.
Child's education,
Yeah.
not in India,
Yeah.
was another,
Yeah.
which was a conversation because,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I still think we shouldn't pay, but
Yeah,
Shreya
no.
wants to pay for
So
it.
I have a strong opinion
Yeah.
there. And the third was, I think, our retirement medical
Yeah.
old
Corpus.
age corpus, so
Yeah.
to speak, right?
There was a fourth also.
Yeah, I know you were gonna say that. I don't recollect this at all, but apparently there was a fourth.
The fourth was a luxury car.
Yes. Yes.
Which now has been cancelled because I have made my
Yeah.
peace with not wanting to buy a luxury car in this country.
Yeah. This
The
is
roads
actually
were-
luxury car Bullet that you added and removed on your own. So it
Yeah.
nets out being the same.
No, no.
So yeah.
Just for the record, now it's on camera, so you can go back. I will not buy a luxury car for two reasons. One, the roads don't deserve it, and two, the taxes are ridiculous. So in case I do want to drive a luxury car, I will go for a vacation abroad, rent a good luxury car there, drive into my heart's content, come back to India. That's the plan.
Which is what
But coming back.
So that was that. So there was a huge conversation around our goals, orienting around that, and then taking stock of where we were. That was one. And so I realized that, and of course, as part of that advice, we were told that for us to get from where we were to where we wanted to be, equity would have to play a huge role. So when you see like this independent, objective person tell you that this is what is needed, not in isolation, but this is what is needed to move towards what you want to do in your life, I think it puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
The second was, I think we also met, we took some advice on where to invest. It was the first time that I opened a demat account, I remember. And so like it was almost like baby steps in that direction as well. And we were taking like advice there as well initially. And so, and not that, I don't know if you wanted to take that advice, but it was very important for me to hear it from a third person. So yeah, we got third.
Ghar ki murgi dal barabar.
Yeah.
If you know, you know.
Anyway, so I had like objective people advise me in this, and that's what convinced.
So I think, sorry, coming back to the larger point, if you have a spouse who doesn't believe in equity and you are facing trouble getting her on that page, a financial plan really helps.
Why her? Excuse me.
Or him.
Yeah.
A financial plan really helps because, like she said, right, a third person comes in, and usually what ends up happening is you're rational with the rest of the world. But for somebody who you are with, you are sometimes a little emotional, and that sort of takes over, and therefore a financial planner really helps in that regard. And I think that's what happened in your case when you saw an Excel with a simulation that if you keep doing FD, here is where you'll net out, and no matter how hard you work or how many promotions you get, you're not going to make those goals, as opposed to if you were to start investing in equity, this is how it projects, it simulates, and I think that is how you finally got comfortable with equity. And so my earnest advice to everybody watching is that this new year, if you still haven't gotten a financial plan made, please get it made. It's a great New Year resolution. It's tough the first time because you need to have a lot of hard conversations like we did, which is also a good forcing mechanism for you to get on the same page.
Yeah. I also feel like you can't get on the same page just for the sake of it. Like always do that because you're orienting towards common goals. So everything working backwards from common goals is just an easier conversation.
And then it also helps not only with like the larger goals, but also with your smaller micro financial decisions in day to day. So say for example, I think that we'll cover that in the spend section about penny wise pound foolish, but I think that's when I also understood this, like truly internalize the concept of penny wise pound foolish, that here is one giant expense you can make today and then cut corners in every small micro expense in all your other underlying areas, as opposed to you kick off this giant expense later because it's an indulgence and you don't really need it, but then live more comfortably with your micro spend and not having to think about those. We'll cover that later. But I think financial plan was the first time you got comfortable with equity, and I think that's when your equities investments truly started back in 2020. Adding to that, I think the other big financial milestone for us was when we bought the house about 2 years ago. And again, we went through another financial planning exercise. It was much easier this time because we just had to update it. But in that one, we learned how to fund the house really, right? What do we sell and what do we keep? How do we optimize for long-term capital gains, in the most tax efficient manner? And I think that financial plan helped us with that. And so that was another second time we did financial planning. And again, that was helpful. And after the house, I think our financials again they got merged a lot more because now the house is such a giant piece of investment in our overall portfolio that then our finances got a little merged.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, if I were to put it very simply, the first financial plan was probably the heavier lift. And it helped in unification of our money philosophies, but not necessarily finances per se. And then the second financial plan, which is when we were buying the house, is when our finances also unified and not just financial philosophy.
Yeah. So, and to add to that, we still continue to track our individual SIPs and our individual goals and all of that. But I think now it's a lot more fluid.
Yeah.
It's not like early days when we had this mental math going on that, okay, if she's paid half the rent and this half, I must even it up.
I
now,
don't know if that sustains. Like, it's the easier way to start out,
Yeah.
I guess, because you're not having those conversations,
Yeah.
and so you just let, like, but once you start having those conversations, I feel like it's easier to do what we're doing now than.
Yeah, so I think that's where we are at now. So let's jump into our current savings and investments. How are we doing it now? What percentage of our overall income are we saving? One. So actually, let's start from the other way. What are the current financial goals that we have that we are saving towards? Then we'll get into how much broadly are we saving, and then third, what investment instruments are we investing into? So let's start with the first one.
Maybe I do the goals.
You do the goals, yeah. Go for it.
The house is out of the way, but I do want to
Yeah.
point out that, like, if or maybe we should talk about where we covered the last section, but I feel like the house is out of the way. Having said that, it's not one that we extended ourselves for.
Please cover it, yeah.
And so while we aligned on these goals, the idea was when you're actually executing on some of these goals, it's easy to get carried away and then have that goal become the biggest goal. So we were buying the house, but we bought potentially a smaller house than we might have if we really extended ourselves. But then that would mean a lot more leverage than
one is a lot about leverage. Also, two is a lot more exposure to real estate and overall portfolio level as what is probably
yeah. So for a whole host of reasons, we didn't overextend ourselves. I mean, of course, it's a leveraged house, but like that's how it is. So with that done, the other two things that are the two big things remaining, of course, are our child's education and what I would consider to be like nest egg retirement money or like just medical expenses. So those are the two big ones, I think.
That's right. And I have made a note here, no luxury car.
Yes, of course.
That has been struck off the goals.
Part of that.
So that is out. But anyway, coming back to our savings and investments. Let's start with the same. While I talk about all kinds of frivolous shit on this channel, starting from luxury watches to luxury cars to all kinds of real estate to spending all kinds of things, I want to call out I am a very thoughtful spender. We will cover this in the next section, in fact, in spends. I do not buy a luxury watch. I wear a Garmin. I do not have a luxury watch. I do not plan to buy a luxury car. Only because I have these goals to first get to. Once those goals are achieved, and then if you see me buy a luxury car, then know that one of the goals is done, and that's why maybe that's happening. But jokes apart, I think I try and second, like I also try and delay gratification a little bit. We are jumping into spending patterns, so might as well just talk a little bit about our spending philosophy. So yeah, I think one, I try and delay gratification as much as possible. Two, she taught me this concept of penny wise pound foolish. Why don't you talk about it, and maybe I can add to that.
I mean, I don't know any other way of living. So like for me, there are, like I said, I don't have a lot of like big spiky things that fascinate me. So it's just an easier thing to do. I like incremental upgrades to my life, which feel sustainable, which give me everyday joy. So maybe like an upgrade in my gym membership is far more gratifying to me than I don't know, like
LV bag.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just how I operate. Yeah, I mean, it's not for your benefit, but it's just fundamentally who I am. And so I don't like sweating the small stuff on a daily basis. Like if I have decided that this is going to be part of my everyday happy life, then I don't like to reconsider it every day. So like if I like going out for like coffee and I love cafes and I love new cafes, it's something I'm going to do every weekend. And in the larger scheme of things, it really isn't a lot. So I don't appreciate those conversations every weekend. However, if there's a big conversation like a house or a car or a LV bag, it is really open. Probably won't happen from my side at all, but like it's also open to discussion, and those are the things that I'd spend thought on. So that's how I operate.
And I think I really internalized and started appreciating this as time has passed by, that look, you don't need to go crazy with the big stuff.
Because you could do that and still wouldn't amount to anything.
And it doesn't really give you the joy. Like I have made a few of these purchases in life, and I'm like, okay, so what? Now I bought something which is really expensive, but like now what? Right? So it truly, I agree with you. I don't think it really adds. It's just a little bit of, it's overrated.
So coming back, our financial goals, we had the house is done. Now we have those two things left.
So I'll cover investments now. I think before I also get into investments, I've made a note of the investments part. I'll give an overview of where our current portfolio is. And so like, remember, we've come a long way. We used to be 50-50 in equity. Now with the markets also running up after COVID, the US stock markets last 3 years has gone crazy. We are at about 70% equity right now, 8 to 10% in cash, liquid funds. 8 to 10% in gold. Heard wise decisions. Bought a lot of SGBs back in 2020.
Yes, this was such a negotiation, remember? Because I was like, I don't want to do. I remember you telling me that, like, can we not do an FD? And I was like, but I don't feel comfortable with equity either. So SGB was like the middle ground.
Which I'm glad
Which is,
we came about because it worked out really well. And then there's 10%, 10-15% in debt. Broadly, which is all our EPF, VPF, all of that. I am not a firm believer in NPS for another day, another discussion, but I don't put my money in NPS. So yeah, I think that's where we're at. USD INR split is another important one to talk about. Given our biggest goal, one of the biggest goals is kids' education abroad, which is we are saving or planning for USD. And if he ends up studying in India, we have all, then I'll buy a luxury car. But I think saving for USD. And so about 80% of our portfolio is linked to the USD, which also includes gold, by the way. We are a lot more invested in the US markets than the Indian markets. After the house, actually, that shuffle took place because we ended up liquidating a lot of our Indian equity for the house. And then after that, I'm just like, if you're saving for that US gold, then might as well just start doing it in USD, which again worked out really well because their rupee has depreciated like crazy. And the US markets have done a lot better than the India markets. And
hindsight is 2020.
Hindsight is 2020, so I don't want to gloat too much. But yeah, I think the idea really there was to tie it back to a goal, which is kids' education, and hence USD linked, and that's why a majority of our portfolio is linked to USD. Now, coming back to our current investments, where are we investing? I think we're not investing anything in debt as things stand. And I can maybe, if you want to add something, but we've stopped investing in gold. We've stopped investing in debt because it just doesn't make sense from a tax standpoint. There is no concept of a long-term capital gain tax in debt now. Everything is taxed at your slab, and we both fall under the highest tax slab, so it doesn't make sense to invest.
It's like short-term debt instruments is the only one that we need.
Yeah, it's basically liquid arbitrage, which is still taxed like equities where our liquid funds are parked. But beyond that, no. So most of it is going in equity. I will make a separate video on mutual funds, on which mutual funds and why and what my approach there. But broadly, it's a barbell approach. I'll talk about that later. But yeah, I think that's where we are at from an investment standpoint. It's all in equity as things stand. Indian mutual funds, no stocks, and then the US stocks, which I buy periodically. Every time there's a lump sum that comes in either in the form of a bonus or something, I just end up buying USD with that and then invest all of that lump sum over the course of the year because I buy in bulk and then I keep investing gradually over the course of the year. So I think that's where we are at. We continue to do our financial planning every now and then. Whenever we think there is a major, either a financial input come in or outflow that needs to happen, do tend to go back to a financial planner and check that how do you propose we do this. I would say that, look, again, this is a call we take that, for example, back in 2020, when we did it, the financial plan said sell all your Google stock and like start diversifying. I took a call back then saying, okay, I don't see the point of doing this. And so I did not diversify. But when we were buying a house, it made sense to sort of liquidate some of that for Section 54F. And so I diversified then. So I think, look at what the financial planners say.
Correct.
But take your own judgment call based on your own opinion of the market and where you think it's going so that it gives you holding capacity. So I think that's what we did back then. Anything else you want to add on investments?
No, I think that about covers
crypto. I don't do like, I don't know what you.
I mean, come on, like I barely do equities.
I don't do crypto because it's just the regulation in India makes it really hard to do crypto. There are busts on these platforms happening every now and then. If you have figured out a good way to start getting into crypto, I'm not averse to it, but I just haven't found a way to do it in a tax efficient and a safe, secure way. So I think that's where I'm at. Anything else? I think last section of the video, tip for couples who are early on in their journey, any financial tips for them that you would like to share? And then I have a few here, but we can burn that.
Again, I think for me, it would be, like I said, I find I'm not inherently someone who enjoys discussing finance. It's not like I have qualms around discussing it. It's not the most interesting conversation for me. So triggers like inflows, outflows, and aligning towards common goals have really contextualized those conversations. So I'm happy to have them in the context of a goal. I'm happy to have them in the context of an inflow or an outflow. And so maybe, financial planning, intentional financial planning, at least for these trigger moments, is something that I would strongly advise. The first one is going to feel hard if you are like me, but it's well worth it. So that would be one. The second is, I feel like these are things that have served me well, but like just be disciplined about whatever it is that you're earning because, hopefully I think it's a long life and everybody, the sooner you start it, the better it is. So no salary is too small to start saving. And the third, I think is, I didn't know it then, but I can say now, maybe, diversify beyond just debt. I think a lot of us have grown up understanding debt instruments better than equity. So maybe that's my third lesson.
Yeah, I think +1 to most of that. anything that I'm looking at that you missed? I think the big one is transparency. Also, like every time a new goal comes up in either of our minds, say for example, going back to luxury cars, if I were to change my goal and be like, I want to buy a luxury car, I'll be transparent with her and then hopefully arrive at a path that here is what we need to do to get with that, right? So I think transparency every time a goal changes helps both of you be on the same page about that goal. Otherwise, it'll just lead to a stress later on. At some point, one of you will snap that, hey, we didn't align on this, so why are we saving to this and cutting corners there?
Yeah.
And so because it's coming at the cost of something else. So you also need to be aligned on the fact that we're not going to be spending there at saving for this.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that is an alignment in transparency, goal alignment, I think is extremely
and transparency, goal alignment, and I think we covered it at the beginning, which is our money values. I think we've also we just been together for long enough to just understand instinctively, understand each other's money values. So these conversations also help you get to that place where you can start like almost predicting how the other person is going to behave in certain situations. That helps. Like for instance, I know that your money values are more Capex heavy, mine are more Opex heavy. Like if you would want to buy a luxury car, I would be more likely to come to Pranay and say that I'm now going to get a driver and that is an Opex for the rest of our lives. I mean, but we know that fundamentally about each other and we know how to navigate these situations. So transparency and understanding each other's money.
I think I'm still in that camp, by the way. I'm Capex heavy because I see it as a one-time expense that you don't need to multiply into 40 for your retirement corpus. So every time an Opex spend comes, my radar goes like, I'm just going to multiply this into 12, which is monthly, and then into 40. And then add that to my retirement corpus because I want to be able to sustain this for the rest of my life, right? And my granddad, Nanaji had said this, खर्चे करना आसान होता है, पालना मुश्किल होता है. And I think that is the thing. Once you go to a driver, it's very hard to go back. And so now for you to be able to sustain that, you need a certain amount of Capex to be able to operate that Opex. So that's how I think about it. And that's why I'm like, okay, buy a 10 lakh Rolex. Okay, it's a one-off. It's okay. As opposed to...
So real time. So this is like a real-time demonstration of how philosophies can be different. I am far more comfortable with Opex. This has become like a Capex versus Opex debate. Who knew? But no, I mean, I'm more comfortable with the driver because like if you take the 10 lakh and then you divide it by like a couple, like if you've already...
But you're still not going to sustain 40 years of your...
It just gives me... I mean, that's
but
one.
Look, I'm just...
Like I'm a zero Capex person. Like I have no Capex desires in life. I don't sweat the Opex.
I think, getting back to the point, alignment and financial goals is extremely important because now I'll show her that if you bring this Opex, here is how much is going to set your goal back by. So anyway, after this, I think last section, mistakes that we made along the way that we like to share or like things we've forgiven ourselves for, as you like to call it. You go and then I'll go.
Things that we've forgiven ourselves for. I mean, maybe not investing in equity sooner is something that I've forgiven myself for. And otherwise I'm pretty good.
I think my biggest mistake was getting rid of the student loan sooner. I think I was too early on my life to be scared of leverage and debt. Back then I should have embraced it, used that money to invest in mutual funds as opposed to putting it back into Union Bank of India's coffers. So I think getting comfortable with leverage at an early stage would have given me a boost. But I think...
but the right balance of leverage, right? I mean, I think you could...
Now that you think of it as the right balance, but back then that EMI felt like a burden, right? It's like, oh wow, such a big EMI that I have to give. It's only over the year as you progress in your careers, I guess you get a little more comfortable with that sum. But I think that's why hindsight is 2020. Okay, so that I think brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you, Shreya, for joining us and sharing a very enriching Capex versus Opex discussion. But if you like that, please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll try and get you more of these couple finance stories. If we have inspired you to share your story, please fill the form in the pinned comment and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm trying to get to 100k subs soon. With that, thank you and see you all in the next one.
All right. Bye-bye.